Trulva sat in the third row of the lecture hall. Her four eyes blinked slowly as she waited for Professor Keldon to announce the semester assignments. Around her, 200 other students whispered and shifted in their seats. The air smelled of nervousness and excitement. The Galactic Medical Academy was the best school in 12 star systems. Only the smartest students came here. Trulva had worked her whole life to get a seat in this room. Now, in her third year, she would finally get to study a real species. Not from books. Not from old recordings. A real, living species. Professor Keldon walked to the front of the room. He was old, even for a Delcari. His gray skin had deep lines, and his movements were slow but certain. He had seen many things in his long life. He had treated patients from over 300 different species. The students respected him. Some feared him. "Today," he said, his voice filling the room, "you will receive your species assignments. You will study this species for the entire semester. You will learn their biology, their medicine, their weaknesses and strengths. By the end, you will know them better than they know themselves." Trulva felt her heart beat faster. She had hoped for something interesting. Maybe the Veltari, with their crystal bones. Or the Murkdal, who could breathe in water and air. Something that would challenge her mind. The professor began calling names. One by one, students stood up, received their assignments, and sat back down. Some looked happy. Others looked confused. A few looked bored. Trulva of Sector 9, the professor called Dodd. She stood up quickly. Too quickly. Her legs felt weak as she walked to the front. The professor looked at her with an expression she did not understand. Was it pity? Concern? Amusement? He handed her a thin data card. "Homo sapiens," he said. "Good luck." Trulva blinked all four eyes at once. "Homo sapiens? I do not know this species." "You will," the professor said. There was something strange in his voice. "You will know them very well by the end of this semester. They are statistically improbable." She did not understand what he meant. She took the data card and returned to her seat. Around her, other students whispered. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with what might have been sympathy. That evening, Trulva sat in her small room at the student housing complex. She inserted the data card into her study terminal. The screen lit up with information about her assigned species. Homo sapiens. Common name, humans. Planet of origin, Earth. A small blue world in a quiet corner of the galaxy. She began to read. At first, everything seemed normal. Humans were bipedal. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. They breathed oxygen. They ate organic matter for energy. Standard carbon-based life. Then she reached a section on their digestive system. Trulva, read the paragraph 3 times. She was certain there was an error in the translation software. She ran a diagnostic check. The software was working perfectly. She read it again. Humans produced hydrochloric acid inside their own bodies. Not as a weapon. Not as a defense mechanism. They made acid in their stomachs to break down food. The same acid that could dissolve metal. The same acid used in industrial cleaning. Humans just had it inside them. All the time. Trulva sent an urgent message to her study group. Is anyone else studying humans? Please tell me the database has errors. Her friend Variag responded within minutes. I checked. No errors. They really do have acid stomachs. Also, their blood contains iron, like the metal, in their blood. Trulva felt dizzy. She kept reading. The next section was about human evolution. Where they came from. How they became what they were. Humans evolved as something called persistence predators. Trulva had to look up the term. What she found made her drop her data pad. Early humans did not have claws. They did not have fangs. They were not particularly fast or strong compared to other creatures on their planet. So how did they hunt? They walked. They simply walked after their prey. For hours. For days. Across entire continents. The prey would run away and the humans would follow. The prey would run again and the humans would follow again. They did not stop. They did not give up. They just kept walking. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion. Its body would fail. Its heart would give out. And the humans would finally catch up, not even breathing hard, and kill it. Trova pushed away from her desk. Her hands were shaking. Her species, the Volcari, were considered one of the tougher races in the galaxy. They had thick skin and strong muscles. But they had never done anything like this. No species she knew of had ever done anything like this. She sent another message to her study group. They hunted by following things until the things died of exhaustion. This is not a joke. This is real. 17 responses came back. All of them were variations of what? Trilva looked at her datapad. She had only finished the first 2 sections. There were 47 more sections to read. Topics like human immune system and bone regeneration and pain tolerance and adrenaline response. She was not sure she wanted to continue, but she was a student at the Galactic Medical Academy. She had worked too hard to stop now. She took a deep breath, picked up her datapad, and kept reading. By midnight, she had developed a nervous twitch in her left antenna that would not stop. By morning, she had sent over 100 messages to her study group. None of them slept that night. Humans, Trilva decided, were not a species. They were a warning. A reminder that the universe was far stranger and more terrifying than anyone wanted to believe. And she still had 45 sections left to read. 3 days had passed since Trilva received her assignment. She had not left her room except to get food. Even then, she ate quickly and ran back to her studies. There was too much to learn. Too much that did not make sense. Her room was now covered in notes. Datapads lay everywhere. Holographic charts floated above her desk, showing human anatomy from every angle. She had drawn circles around the parts that terrified her most. There were many circles. Today, she was studying the human skeletal system. She had assumed it would be boring. Bones were bones. Every species had some kind of internal or external support structure. Nothing special about that. She was wrong. Human bones were made of calcium and other minerals. That was normal enough. But the way human bones behaved was anything but normal. Humans broke their bones constantly. Not from terrible accidents or battles. From everyday activities. They fell downstairs. They tripped over objects. They played games that involved running into each other at high speeds. And their bones cracked and shattered like they were made of dried branches. This should have meant that humans were fragile, weak, easy to defeat. But then, Trilva, read what happened next. The bones grew back. Not just grew back. They grew back stronger. The healed bone became denser and harder than before. There was a human saying in the medical texts, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Trilva had thought it was a metaphor. Nice phrase that meant nothing real. It was not a metaphor. It was literally true. Human athletes deliberately caused tiny cracks in their bones through intense training. Their bodies then repaired these cracks with stronger material. They were essentially breaking themselves on purpose to become more powerful. Trilva put down her datapad and stared at the wall for a long time. She moved on to the next section. The human immune system. Every species had some way to fight disease. Some used chemical processes. Others relied on symbiotic organisms. The Volcari, Trilva's own people, had a sophisticated network of filtering organs that cleaned their blood. Humans had a different approach. Humans had declared war inside their own bodies. Their immune system was not a passive defense. It was an army. Billions of tiny cells that patrolled the bloodstream, looking for invaders. When they found something that did not belong, they attacked. They surrounded the enemy. They consumed it. They literally ate it alive. Some immune cells remembered every enemy they had ever fought. If the same threat appeared again, even years later, these cells would recognize it and destroy it faster than before. Humans called these memory cells. They never forgot. They never forgave. But that was not the worst part. When humans got sick with certain infections, their bodies had a terrible weapon. They raised their own internal temperature. On purpose. This was called a fever. Humans would heat themselves up to levels that could damage their own organs. They would lie in bed, burning from the inside, sweating and shaking. Their bodies were trying to cook the invaders to death. The fact that this also cooked the human was apparently considered an acceptable risk. Trilva sent a message to Voralek. They cooked themselves alive to kill germs. Their own bodies try to kill them to save them. Voralek's response was a single word: why? Trilva did not have an answer. She needed a break. She decided to read something lighter. Surely the section on human social behavior would be less disturbing than their biology. She was wrong again. Humans kept pets. Many species kept animals. This was not unusual. Some kept animals for food, others for labor. A few kept small creatures for companionship. Humans had taken a different path. On their home planet, there was a creature called a wolf. Wolves were pack hunters. They had sharp teeth, powerful jaws, and strong legs built for chasing prey. They worked together to bring down animals much larger than themselves. They were one of the most effective predators on Earth. Humans looked at these wolves and thought, I want one. Over thousands of years, humans had taken wolves into their homes. They fed them. They sheltered them. They bred them to be friendly and loyal. The descendants of those wolves were now called dogs. They slept in human beds. They ate food from human hands. They wore tiny clothes that humans made for them. The apex predators of Earth had become human companions, but it did not stop with wolves. Humans domesticated everything. Large cats that could kill them with one swipe. Horses that could crush their skulls with a single kick. Birds that could tear flesh from bone. Humans looked at all of these dangerous creatures and said, that one is my friend now. Trilva found images of humans cuddling with animals that weighed 5 times more than they did. Animals with teeth the length of human fingers. The humans were smiling. They looked happy. She did not understand. Her door chimed. Someone was outside. Trilva looked up from her work, confused. She had not invited anyone. She opened the door to find her academic advisor, Professor Keldon himself. The old Delcari looked at her with concern. The library staff contacted me, he said. They said you have been in the medical archives for 18 hours straight. They are worried about you. Trilva realized she had lost track of time, again. I am fine, she said. But her voice was shaking. Her left antenna was still twitching. Her 4 eyes could not seem to focus on the same point. Professor Keldon stepped into her room and looked around at the chaos of notes and datapads. He picked up one of her charts. It was labeled Human Pain Response and covered in red warning marks. Ah, he said softly. You have reached the section on pain tolerance. Trilva nodded slowly. Then you know about the human ability to simply ignore mortal wounds? She nodded again. She had read about humans who kept fighting with broken bones, torn muscles, and damaged organs. Humans who did not notice they had been stabbed until hours after the fight. Humans who apologized for bleeding on the floor while missing entire limbs. Professor Keldon put down the chart. I assigned you humans for a reason, Trilva. You are one of my best students. You need a challenge." "This is not a challenge," Trilva said. "This is a nightmare." The professor smiled. It was not a comforting smile. "Wait until you meet one in person. Then you will understand what a nightmare truly is." He left her alone with her research. Trilva sat down heavily in her chair. She looked at the pile of datapads still waiting to be read. The section on adrenaline response. The section on human history of self-surgery. The section on psychological phenomenon, spite. She picked up the next datapad. She had 42 sections left. The shuttle docked at Station 7 with a soft thump. Trilva gripped her seat with all four hands. Her hearts were beating so fast she could hear them in her ears. She was about to meet real humans. The Galactic Medical Academy had arranged this field study as part of her coursework. She would spend 30 days observing the human crew of Station 7. She would watch how they lived, how they worked, how they treated their injuries and illnesses. She would take notes and write reports. She was terrified. The airlock opened with a hiss. Trilva stepped onto the station and looked around. The corridor was clean and well lit. Nothing about it seemed dangerous. But she knew better now. She knew what lived here. A human was waiting for her. The human was female. She had dark hair pulled back from her face and brown eyes that seemed to study Trilva with curiosity. She wore a white medical uniform with a small symbol on the chest. "You must be the exchange student," the human said. Her voice was soft but clear. "I am Yuna. I am the medical officer for this station. You will be working with me." Trilva tried to speak. Her throat felt dry. This creature in front of her had acid in her stomach, iron in her blood, the genetic memory of hunting animals to death across endless plains. And she was smiling. "Yes," Trilva managed to say. "I am Trilva. Thank you for having me." Yuna nodded. "Come, I will show you the medical bay. We can talk about your study there." Trilva followed the human through the station corridors. She noticed how Yuna moved. Smooth and efficient. No wasted energy. Like a predator that knew it had all the time in the world. They passed other crew members. More humans. A tall male with broad shoulders and thick arms. A smaller female with quick, darting eyes. A young male who smiled at Trilva as they passed and waved one hand in greeting. They all looked so normal, so harmless. Trilva reminded herself that looks could be deceiving. The medical bay was small but well equipped. Trilva recognized most of the equipment. Basic diagnostic tools, emergency surgical supplies, medicine storage units. It looked like any other medical facility. "Most of our work is routine," Yuna explained. "Small injuries, minor illnesses, burns from the engine room, cuts from the maintenance work. Nothing too exciting." Trilva nodded. She took out her datapad and began making notes. The first 3 days were quiet. Trilva observed Yuna treating minor problems. A headache, a twisted ankle, a rash from an allergic reaction. The humans came in, received treatment, and left. They complained a little, but not much. They seemed to accept pain as a normal part of life. On the 4th day, everything changed. The door to the medical bay slid open. A human male stumbled in. He was holding his left arm against his chest. Blood was dripping onto the floor. Behind him, another human was shouting for help. Trilva froze. She could see metal sticking out of the man's forearm. A piece of machinery had broken and pierced straight through his flesh. The wound was deep. Blood was everywhere. This was an emergency. This required immediate stasis. Life support systems. Emergency surgery. A full medical team. Yuna walked over calmly. "Doan," she said. "What did you do this time?" The injured human, Dohan, laughed. He actually laughed. With a piece of metal in his arm. The coupling came loose, he said. I did not move fast enough. Yuna examined the wound. She nodded once, as if seeing a metal shard in someone's arm was completely ordinary. Then she grabbed the metal and pulled it out. Trulva screamed. Doan did not scream. He made a small sound, almost like a grunt, and then was quiet. Blood flowed faster from the wound, now that the metal was gone. Yuna cleaned the wound with something from a bottle. She called it antiseptic. Then she took a needle and thread and began stitching the human's flesh back together. Doan sat still and watched her work. He did not cry. He did not faint. He just sat there and talked about what had gone wrong with the coupling. When Yuna finished, she wrapped the wound in white cloth and patted Dohan on the shoulder. You will live, she said. Try not to do it again. No promises, Dohan said. And then he stood up and walked toward the door. Trulva found her voice. Where are you going? Dohan looked back at her with confusion. Back to work. The coupling still needs to be fixed. But your arm. Dohan looked down at his bandaged arm as if he had forgotten about it. It is fine. Yuna fixed it. And then he was gone. Trulva turned to Yuna. Her whole body was shaking. How? How is he walking? He should be in recovery for days, weeks, the blood loss alone. Yuna smiled. It was a kind smile, but there was something behind it that Trulva did not understand. Humans heal fast. And Doan is stubborn. He does not like being still. Over the next 2 weeks, Trulva saw more. She saw a human continue working with 2 broken fingers because the job was almost done. She saw another human refuse pain medication because she did not like how it made her feel foggy. She saw a human burn his hand on a hot pipe and simply run cold water over it. Before going back to his duties, she also learned about adrenaline. Yuna showed her recordings from the station security system. An accident from 3 months ago. A support beam had collapsed and pinned one of the crew members to the floor. The human was trapped. The beam was too heavy for one person to lift. A human named Minju had arrived first. She was small, one of the smallest humans on the station. The beam weighed almost 3 times what she did. She lifted it anyway, not easily, not gracefully. Her face turned red. Her muscles strained. Blood vessels appeared on her forehead. But she lifted the beam high enough for the trapped crew member to crawl free. Then she collapsed. Adrenaline, Yuna explained. When humans are scared or angry or desperate, our bodies release a chemical that makes us stronger, faster, able to ignore pain and push past normal limits. Minju should not have been able to lift that beam. But her body decided that someone needed saving, so it made it possible. Trulva stared at the recording. She watched it 3 more times. What happened to her afterward? Muscle tears. Joint strain. She was in the medical bay for a week. Yuna paused. She apologized to me for being slow. She said she should have lifted the beam faster. Trulva did not know what to say. That night, she lay in her temporary quarters and thought about everything she had seen. Humans were not just biologically strange. They were psychologically impossible. They treated terrible injuries as minor inconveniences. They pushed their bodies past breaking points, and then apologized for not pushing harder, and they did it all with smiles on their faces. Trulva was beginning to understand why Professor Keldon had looked at her that way. When he gave her this assignment, she was not just studying a species dot, she was studying a force of nature. Trulva had been on Station 7 for 20 days now. She had filled 12 datapads with notes. She had recorded over 50 hours of observations. She had learned more about humans than any textbook could teach, and she still did not understand them. Tonight, she sat in the station's common room with some of the crew. They were having what humans called a dinner break. They sat around tables, eating food and talking. Trilva had been invited to join them. She was still getting used to watching humans eat. They put food in their mouths, right next to those acid-producing organs. They chewed with flat teeth that were clearly not designed for the meat many of them ate. And they seemed to enjoy it. A human woman named Ji Yong sat across from Trilva. She was older than most of the crew, with gray streaks in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She worked in the engineering section, keeping the station systems running. "So," Ji Yong said, "Yuna tells me you are writing a report about us. What have you learned?" Trilva thought carefully before answering. "I have learned that humans are very durable." The humans around the table laughed. Trilva was not sure why. "Durable," Ji Yong repeated. "Yes, I suppose we are." "Did anyone tell you about my grandfather?" Trilva shook her head. He was a mountain climber. He loved climbing to high places, even though it was dangerous. One day, when he was young, he fell into a crack in the ice. His arm got trapped. He could not pull it free. Trilva leaned forward. She could feel this story going somewhere terrible. He was alone. No one knew where he was. No rescue was coming. So he did the only thing he could do. Ji Yong paused and took a bite of her food. He cut off his own arm with a small knife. Then he climbed out of the crack and walked 15 kilometers to find help. The table was quiet. Not because the humans were shocked. They had clearly heard this story before. They were quiet out of respect. "He lived?" Trilva asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He lived another 40 years. He learned to climb with one arm. He said losing the arm was not the hard part. The hard part was leaving the arm behind because he was too tired to carry it." Trilva did not know how to respond to this. Another crew member, a young man named Taiwu, spoke up. "My grandmother survived a disease that should have killed her. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lived another 20 years. When we asked how, she said she was too busy to die. She had grandchildren to spoil." More stories came out. A great-uncle who walked for 3 days through a desert with a broken leg. A cousin who continued working after being struck by lightning. A neighbor who woke up from a coma specifically to argue with a nurse about the food. Humans, Trilva realized, did not just survive. They survived out of spite, out of stubbornness, out of a pure refusal to accept that they were supposed to die. Later that night, Trilva searched the station's database for more information. She found something called Human Medical History. The records went back thousands of years. What she found made her question everything she knew about medicine. Humans had performed surgery before they invented pain-blocking drugs. Before anesthesia existed, humans would simply endure. They would lie down on a table and let someone cut into their bodies while they were fully awake. Some of them even watched. The patients were given alcohol to drink or a piece of leather to bite, and then the cutting would begin. They screamed, of course, but they survived. Many of them survived. Trilva found records of humans removing tumors this way, amputating limbs, setting broken bones, all without proper pain management. All through sheer force of will. She also found information about something called vaccination. Humans had discovered that certain diseases could only infect a person once. After surviving the disease, the body became immune. So humans had a brilliant, terrifying idea. They would give themselves the diseases on purpose. They took small amounts of deadly germs and put them into their own bodies. Just enough to trigger an immune response, but not enough to cause full sickness. Their bodies learned to fight the disease without having to suffer through it completely. Humans called this vaccination. They did it to their children. Babies just months old would receive injections of weakened diseases. It was considered normal. It was considered good parenting. Trilva sat back in her chair and rubbed her eyes. 4 eyes meant 4 times the headache dot. She thought about the humans she had met on this station. Yuna, who treated terrible wounds like they were paper cuts. Dohan, who went back to work with metal still in his arm. Jiyoung, whose grandfather had cut off his own limb to survive. They were all so friendly, so welcoming. They had taught her human card games and shared their food with her. They asked about her home world and listened with genuine interest. But beneath that friendliness was something else. Something hard and unyielding. A core of iron that would not break, no matter what the universe threw at them. She found one more record in the database. A historical file about a human named Sunho. Sunho had been a soldier in a war long ago. He had been shot, stabbed, and left for dead. He survived. Years later, he developed cancer. The doctor said he would not live. He survived. He developed cancer 2 more times. He survived both times. At the age of 70, Sunho was in a shuttle crash. The shuttle broke apart on re-entry. Most passengers died on impact. Sunho was found in the wreckage with a broken spine and collapsed lung, still breathing. When rescue workers asked how he was still alive, Sunho smiled. "I was too angry to die," he said. "Death will have to try harder than that." Sunho lived another 8 years. Trilva closed the database and stared at the ceiling of her quarters. She thought about her thesis. She had planned to write something simple. A biological analysis of Homo sapiens. A straightforward academic paper. That was not enough anymore. Humans were not just a species. They were a statement. A declaration that the universe, with all its dangers and horrors, could not break them. That no matter how much pain was thrown at them, they would stand back up and keep walking. Trilva began writing. Her thesis would be called "On the Classification of Humans as a Deathworld Apex Species, a Study in Biological Impossibility." She worked through the night. She did not stop until the words were done. When she finally finished, the station's artificial sunrise was beginning. Golden light filled her room. And Trilva felt something she had not expected. She felt safe. If humans could survive all of that, then maybe, just maybe, the universe was not as dangerous as she had always believed. Because humans were out there, refusing to give up, and now she was among them. The presentation hall at the Galactic Medical Academy was full. Every seat was taken. Students and professors from 12 different departments had come to watch. Word had spread about Trilva's thesis. Everyone wanted to hear what she had discovered about humans. Trilva stood at the front of the room, trying to control her nerves. Her 4 eyes scanned the crowd. She saw Professor Keldon in the front row, his old face unreadable. She saw her study group near the back, all of them looking worried for her. She took a deep breath and began. "Humans," she said, "are currently classified as a Category 7 dangerous species. This classification is wrong. It is not just wrong. It is dangerously wrong." A murmur went through the crowd. Category 7 was already considered severe. Only species capable of significant harm to others received such a rating. "Based on my research and direct observation," Trilva continued, "I propose that humans be reclassified as Category 12, existential." The murmur became a roar. Category 12 was the highest possible rating. It was reserved for species that posed a threat to the fabric of galactic civilization. Only 3 species in recorded history had ever received this classification. Professor Keldon raised a hand. The room fell silent. "Explain," he said simply. Trilva nodded. She had prepared for this. Humans evolved on a death world. Their planet is covered in natural disasters, deadly predators, and toxic environments. They should have died out millions of years ago. Instead, they became the dominant species on their world. She pulled up her first set of data. Images of human biology appeared on the screen behind her. Humans have acid in their stomachs strong enough to dissolve metal. They have iron in their blood, which most species would consider toxic. Their immune systems wage constant war inside their own bodies. They can raise their internal temperature to dangerous levels just to fight infection. She switched to the next set of images. Historical records. Medical cases. Humans heal from injuries that would kill any other known species. Their bones grow back stronger after breaking. They can continue functioning through pain that would shut down our nervous systems. They performed surgery on themselves before they invented ways to block pain. The room was completely silent now. But all of this, Trova said, is not why I believe they should be classified as existential. She paused, letting the tension build. Humans form pack bonds, not just with each other, with everything. She showed new images now. Humans with animals. Humans with machines. Humans with aliens from species that had been their enemies just generations ago. Humans will adopt anything. They keep deadly predators as companions. They name their machines and mourn them when they break. They form emotional attachments to objects, ideas, and creatures that could easily kill them. She pulled up the footage she had been saving. Video from Station 7's medical bay. On the screen, Yuna was treating a wounded patient. The patient was not human. It was a Delcari trader, one of Professor Keldun's own species. The Delcari and humans had been at war 2 generations ago. Thousands had died on both sides. Old hatreds still existed. But in the video, Yuna worked with the same care and attention she showed to human patients. She cleaned the wounds gently. She spoke soft words of comfort. She stayed by the Delcari's side until he was stable. I asked Yuna why she helped him with such care, Trova said. She looked at me like I had asked a strange question. She said, he was hurt. What else would I do? Trova turned back to face the audience. This is what makes humans Category 12, not their strength, not their endurance, not their impossible biology. It is their capacity for loyalty. She brought up her final slide. A simple statement in bold letters. Once a human decides you belong to them, they will do anything to protect you. They will fight for you. They will die for you. They will walk through fire and face death itself if it means keeping you safe. They are monsters, Trova said. By every definition we use, they are monsters. They are predators from a world that should not be able to support complex life. They survive through stubbornness and spite. They laugh at injuries that would kill us. She paused. But they are our monsters now. They have joined the galactic community. They have formed bonds with us. And if you are fortunate enough to be claimed by a human, if they decide that you are part of their pack. She thought about her 30 days on Station 7. She thought about Dohan teaching her card games every evening, even when she kept losing. She thought about Jiang sharing stories of her family, making Trova feel like part of something bigger. She thought about Yuna checking on her stress levels every morning, bringing her special tea when she seemed tired. She thought about the day she had fallen ill with a minor virus. The entire human crew had taken turns sitting with her. They had brought her food and told her jokes and refused to leave her alone. When she asked why they were spending so much time with her, Taiwu had simply said, "You are ours now. We take care of our own. Nothing in this galaxy will be allowed to harm you," Trova finished. That is the promise of humanity. That is why they are Category 12, not because they are a threat to us, but because they will destroy anything that threatens what they love. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Professor Keldun stood up. He walked slowly to the front of the room and looked at Trova's presentation. He studied the data the videos, the conclusions. Finally, he turned to the review board. I move that this thesis be approved with the highest honors, he said. Trilva has shown us something we should have understood long ago. Humans are not just a species to be studied. They are a species to be grateful for. The vote was unanimous. After the ceremony, Trilva found Professor Keldon waiting for her in the hallway. You will receive many offers now, he said. Research positions, teaching jobs, important work across the galaxy. Trilva nodded. She had expected this. But I suspect, the professor continued, you have already made your choice. Trilva smiled. Her left antenna was still twitching, but now it was from excitement rather than fear. I have requested a permanent posting to Station 7, she said. I submitted the application this morning. Professor Keldon nodded slowly. You have been claimed by them. Yes, Trilva said. And I find that I do not mind at all. 3 weeks later, she returned to Station 7. The entire human crew was waiting for her at the airlock. Una had made a banner that said, Welcome home, in Trilva's native language. The letters were crooked and some of the colors were wrong. But it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Darhon pulled her into something humans called a hug. It involved wrapping arms around someone and squeezing. It should have felt threatening. Instead, it felt like safety. We saved your room, Jiang said. We knew you would come back. How did you know? Trilva asked. Jiang smiled. Because you are ours now, and we do not let go of what is ours. Trilva looked at the faces of her human crew. Her pack, her family. She had come to Station 7 to study monsters. She was staying because she had found a home.